Hi there, and welcome to week 10 of Great Writers of English Literature. This week, we're going to be talking about Charles Dickens' 1849 novel, David Copperfield, one of the most famous books in the English language and personally one of my very favorites. Like Jane Eyre, David Copperfield is a Bildungsroman, a coming-of-age story where the hero or protagonist moves from being a weak and powerless child to mature and secure adulthood. Like most other Bildungsromans, David Copperfield is told in the first person. That means the writer uses I and tells his own story from his own point of view. Importantly, David Copperfield is also a work of autobiographical fiction, or fictional autobiography. Instead of making up David's life purely out of his imagination, the author, Charles Dickens, uses fragments from his own real life and changes them around a bit so they're hard to recognize. For instance, David's immature decision to marry Doris Spenlow reflects Dickens' regrets about his own marriage. And we see in the Mr. Micawber character, young David's landlord, a version of Dickens' own father who was always getting into debt and who eventually wound up in prison. Instead of attempting to read the whole book, we're going to be focusing this week on chapter 11 of the novel, which contains the most significant autobiographical features. In addition to Mr. Micawber's problems with creditors, in this chapter, David tells the reader about how he was taken out of school at age 10, sent to live away from home, and forced to work full-time in a grimy inner-city warehouse. In the novel, this work involves bottling and packaging wine, but the story is based on young Dickens' real-life experience when he was also taken out of school at the age of 12 and forced to work in a warehouse packaging blacking, a kind of industrial oil used to treat cast iron. The stories are quite similar, though many details are changed. But most importantly, the core feeling of the story, the child's interior experience of shame, misery, and loneliness come through perfectly. By sharing his personal experience, albeit in a disguised form, Dickens drew attention to one of the great social injustices of his age, the problem of child labor. According to Emma Griffin, a professor of history at the University of East Anglia, research has shown that the average age at which children started work in early 19th century Britain was 10 years old. In industrial areas, she writes, children started work on average at 8.5 years old. Most of these young workers worked in factories, standing at the spinning machines, repairing breaks in the thread. Some of them were scavengers, crawling beneath the machinery to clear it of dirt, dust, or anything else that might disturb the mechanism. In coal mines, children minded trapdoors, picked out coals at the pit mouth, or carried picks for the adult miners. All working children received very low pay, did work that was dirty and dangerous, and usually worked long hours. You can find out more about child labor during the Victorian era by checking out Professor Griffin's informative illustrated article at the British Library website. This week, for your writing assignment, I'm asking you to take a page from Dickens' book and produce your own piece of short autobiographical fiction. Using this chapter from David Copperfield as a model, reimagine and create a fictional version of some dramatic moment from your own life, changing details to disguise your real-life experience, but preserving the emotional significance of your story. You can find full details for the assignment in our weekly Blackboard folder. As always, I'm excited to see what you share.